which if you know Kansas, I am just up the turnpike, about 30 miles. So I drove in this morning. You'll have to forgive me, this is the first time I've gone solo on this presentation. Usually a couple of my collaborators are presenting with me. I will explain where each one of them is as we go through this. But this works whether you're a social studies teacher or whether you're just interested in working kind of either discussions or using social networking in the classroom. So let me just kind of see which way, because I will go whichever way you want with questions. Who's social studies teachers? Yeah, there's something for us at a conference. Glenn was like, we need more social studies. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And then just interested in the social networking side of things. Super, I should be able to hit both of you, both ways as we go. So, maybe, there we go. Okay, so if you have your devices, since this is the wonderful Podstock, I have a few things here. I've got this top one. I know it's long and convoluted. I haven't come up with an easy way to make a shortcut. That is the direct link to my wiki through the El Dorado Schools. You can find me if you go to the El Dorado Schools main site and go to schools and go to middle school and find me. It's but that gets you straight there. I've put everything, a lot of what I'm talking about, as well as documents instead of doing printed handouts. You can get everything from there. And then also we have a few mock logins for the actual Just War site. If you want to log on and kind of play around, tool around on the site itself, you're welcome to do that. Those will probably open through the weekend. One of my collaborators and I will kind of turn those off probably early next week, but that gives you the weekend to kind of play around, see what's in there if you have any questions. If you need me to read it, just in case to double check what you've put into your search bar, EHS Media for El Dorado High School, media.eldoradoschools.org/groups/Kori Green, that's me. And then the usernames are Just War Guest 1 through 3 and Guest 2012 will get you on. And that website is, I'll give you a minute, typing away. Forgive me if my teeth start chattering. There is a good vent right here. And then if you're going to my wiki, once you get to the wiki, I've done a link right up at the top that says Podstock 2012. Although it also has, if you go down just a little bit, I do have my Just War link that was for the kids. That's still set up for the last discussion that we did in May. So you can kind of see exactly what it is I provide the kids to for some of the discussions. So that'll give you that idea. While you guys are still typing, I'll kind of give a little bit of background. This all grew out of the master's thesis of one of my collaborators, Nick Lawrence, who now teaches in the Bronx. And it's kind of grown from there. The one thing we all have in common is we are all KU grads and master students. So depending on how you feel about KU, that could be a good or a bad thing. But it's all, our connection is our advisor. So that's kind of how we all came together and got drafted into this project. So, waiting for that remote catch up. Or I can also go this way. Aha, there we go. Participating teacher, there are four classroom teachers that are currently involved in this project. Brian Bouchard out of Pioneer Middle School in Gardner, Kansas. He is not here today because football camp started this week. So he is currently out in the heat making boys run around in pads, or probably not pads yet. But he is 7th grade social studies. Thomas Fulbright, he teaches at Hope Street Academy, which is the alternative school in Topeka. He has 9th grade world history, although he kind of can incorporate it into his different classes because kind of just the nature of his school, it's a little more fluid. But he works it in. He's not here because originally his baby was due this week. She did come a little early, but he didn't think his wife would appreciate his deserting the new family so early. And so Thomas is not here. That's me. I'm here. And then Nick Lawrence, it is his thesis that this all kind of rooted out of, because he was looking at social networking in the classroom. He teaches out of the East Bronx Academy for the Future, the full title, which is a charter school in New York City. And he is not here because he left for England yesterday. So I will be seeing him on Sunday. He left yesterday, I leave tomorrow. And we'll get into why it is that we got to go to England for 3 weeks. So, just the pure logistics. We'll start on that side just to kind of get the technical side out. Curricular alignment. We've got 3 different schools, 3 different grade levels, 2 different states going on. How did we make it all fit? Looking at, within the context of social studies, it's about wars. Wars show up throughout the standards, but how do you make them connect? Well, the way we did it is because the curriculum in New York's a little different than, but even though he's 8th grade history, so it's still U.S. history, a little bit different. And they're testing New York, although they just got rid of the Regency exam, it may be coming back, maybe not. Now we're making the transfer to Common Core, who knows. Then we've got Thomas within world history, still wars kind of play a role in world history, just every once in a while. Then we've got Brian down at the 8th grade level, or the 7th grade level, which hits Kansas history and geography. It can all work in there together. So looking at war as a whole worked, and then looking at, instead of looking at each war individually as just kind of, okay, here's the French-American War, here's the French and English War, here's the American Revolution. We've decided to try to pull those through and pull common themes through all of those conflicts through time. So we look at them, and so that it's not just we look at it and then move on, and then we look at each one individually. We're trying to see what are the common things between them all, and whether or not a conflict actually arose out of something. We've been trying to find more cases of when a war didn't happen. So that's another thing we've been trying to work in. Scheduling logistics, obviously, some schools are block schedule, some schools are on, a 7-hour day. We've got that little bit of time lag right now with New York. We might, next year, we are hoping to incorporate a couple schools out of England. So that's going to be a 6-hour time delay. How are we going to work that part out? Technology of access to computers. We did have another school in Missouri that was going to participate initially, but because of their firewalls in their district, he just still hasn't been able to get through those. So it's kind of what can you get to within your school. Then you've got the fun, I know Brian and I ran into a lot of the problems. Once state assessments start in February, do you have access to a computer lab in your school at all for the next 2 months? So some of that also comes in. When can you wedge in? Because these discussions happen once a month on Fridays. So that is the one thing. Usually I was able to, and my now former, I'm going to yell at SDAT for stealing our vice principal. But so she can kind of the fun of wedging projects in with assessments. Online decorum. These are kids that maybe most of us are dealing with middle schoolers in our classrooms, which, depending on whether their parents are following Facebook's 13 and older rule, how have they used the internet in the past? So, are they using text speak? Are they, under what circumstances? It's almost guaranteed they haven't really used it in an academic setting up to this point. So how do we set up an environment that is conducive to education and kind of keeps them focused, knowing how to interact? Because like with the presentation we saw, they're supposed to be digital natives. We know they're going to be using this technology for the rest of their lives. How do we set them up to be successful and know when is it okay to talk like this and when is it okay to talk like, you're actually in school and having a discussion? So how we set that up, and I'll go into that. So this is also, we're covering things that are being discussed in class anyway. So this is either just a reinforcement, allowing them to go a little bit deeper. And that is what this really is, especially with social studies, with kind of the critical thinking. with what's coming in with the Common Core, with being able to write and think critically. This was the big thing, because it's amazing what came out of, these are 12, 13, 14-year-old students, and the kind of thinking that they're engaging in. Still trying. Oh well. And then how do we work with the just the logistics of monitoring the discussions? Because the other thing that we've run into, yes, we might have 3 or 4 classrooms in a discussion at a time, which in theory means there are 3 or 4 teachers, sets of eyeballs watching the discussions. But then you also have little Billy's computer's not working, that so-and-so has forgotten their password, So you're trying to troubleshoot the technology side of things, while a majority of the students are still actually typing and discussing. So how do you manage that side as well? Luckily, our advisor has PhD students that can kind of help us out with some of that stuff. But whether or not you've made it there, here is what the front page, we use a Ning Network, which started in the business community. What is nice about the Ning Network, it is a closed environment. You cannot get in unless you're invited in. That's why we gave you those passwords that then we will take away from you, so that it makes it safe for our students. The only people who are allowed to put their eyeballs on this site are people who have a login, a password, and have been invited in. So it's the teachers, it's our advisor and his PhD students that are helping us at KU, and then the students themselves. And the students do not have that administrative capacity to invite other people in. So it's them and us, and that's it. So a lot of times that's kind of the loophole that helps you with, getting that approval within your schools. Is it is closed. It's not Facebook. It's not Google. It is just for us. We do have the kind of the upper echelon. Nick Lawrence is very good at writing grants, so he's been able to get us covered and gets the funding to be able to get this in the classroom and get us access. And I'll take you out to this real quick. So if you get a chance to look on, it looks like Facebook. It acts like Facebook. They can set up their profiles. They can add pictures. So that's a really good thing for them. We also, to kind of with the anonymity so that the kids don't really know, we do have a format for their names. They're first identified by which school they are. So EMS, EBA, PRMS, _, first name, last initial. That's it. And their pictures are not supposed to be, for their profile, are not supposed to be of themselves. So that's kind of an added level of security so that we kind of preserve that student's, yes, they're online, but we're still preserving kind of their profile. And then for research purposes, for presentation purposes, we also do get parental permission to use it with any of our publications, with anything like this. Yeah, it's justwar.ning.com. Get you straight there. But it is nice because you can embed video, you can embed the discussions. It's pretty handy. This is set up for the last discussion of the year, so you can even do news feeds. So brought all that in, all in one location. The teachers, how do you facilitate this? We have a teacher group.
I hate to interrupt you, but how long will those passwords be active if I wanted to say go back and talk to one of my other teachers about this?
We're thinking through early next week.
Okay.
It's probably when we'll deactivate them. But if you send us another email, we could set you up if you want to show someone later on. Shoot me an email. I've got it, my personal one at the end. You can, we could probably open it up for a few days for you. But yeah, so there's a teachers group that only the teachers are involved in. So we can post documents there. We are talking about using digital Dropbox a little this year as well. But so we're all members. We can have discussions. We can kind of orchestrate things from there, because trying to follow all your email threads from email can kind of get, and it's like, oh, where was that attachment? Where was that document? So that gives us some place that we can be and use. And then the students themselves, there are 2 groups. So if you want to think your classroom is one, your face-to-face group. So since we're having these discussions, you've got to prep them for the discussion. So that's in the classroom, usually in small groups. We'll give them the situation that they're discussing. They'll discuss it ahead of time. We've, through the 2 years, we've been creating more digital or graphic organizers, and that lets them kind of organize their thoughts before they're in front of the computer. So it gives them a day or 2 before the discussion to kind of get their thoughts in order, to have it down in front of them so that then when they get in front of the computers, it's actually time for discussion and they can actually get involved right off the bat. Usually with the groups, we have one person who's assigned to type up whatever their thought was for that discussion, and then the rest just can go ahead and start commenting. So we use these face-to-face groups. So when I say face-to-face, that's just kind of the classroom group. And then the online groups, inter-school online discussions. So like I said, those happen once a month on Fridays. And usually we called them time zones, and it would be broken up by, what hour. So some time zones may have all 4 schools participating. Other time zones may kind of have one and with a lag because everyone's lunch is at a different time. This school has early release this day. This school, is in the middle of conferences. This class is doing state testing. So there would be some asynchronous, okay, I'm able to get on this day, you're able to get on this day, and we'll pull it all together later. But at least you're all getting on and discussing. So each of our teachers, we each have our own student group. This makes it easy to monitor our students, makes it easier to do the grades because we did have rubrics for the discussions. This made it, when you have your student group, it makes it easy to find your kids and find all their posts. But it's also a good way when we talked about setting up those kind of online decorum, how do you function? This is kind of the way that we would start. Nick, Mr. Lawrence, is really good at using his kind of round because they have classroom sets of web books. But it's handy because you can kind of set up what does an online discussion look like, what is good behavior, what is not good behavior. So you can kind of give them that test, get on before all the other kids are involved and give them that practice of how will this discussion work, how should it look. We are asking them to use proper grammar, proper punctuation, spelling. We are a little more forgiving, although we did notice this year there's a lot more chatter in the classrooms mocking other students, perhaps grammar or spelling faults when you're kind of like, Pot, have you met Kettle? Because have you read some of your own posts? But so we've got those face-to-face groups, and then like I said, we've got the time zones. So this year it was really convenient. It worked out. Time zone 1 was my period 1. Time zone 2 was my period 2 on. Last year, it seems like hour 5 was actually in time zone 4. So it just depends, luck of the draw and scheduling at any given school that year. But then all the students then join that time zone. So it doesn't matter which school they were, they joined that time zone, and that's where they'll have their discussions. You can see the members, so you see their pictures that are on their profiles. And then usually the top discussion right there is going to be that discussion of that day that they're going to be doing. Okay, so there were 3 rounds that we really used for the instructional side of this. So the formative round was just to introduce them to what justifies war. Why would one country choose to go to war against another? So that's just kind of to get a first list that these students are going to be using and going from there. And then there's the application round. So that's when we kind of get into the meat of social studies. So we have the individual conflicts that they're looking at and deciding, okay, given this situation, given the list that we created in the first place, does this conflict or does this situation rate actually, going to war over? And then at the end of the year, there's the summative rounds. They look at their reasoning again. We ask them to come up with their top 2, 3, 4 reasons for going to war. The list at the beginning of the year has been 10 to 12. We ask them to, okay, let's finalize this, let's go to a small one, you've been using this all year long, we've looked at all these other conflicts, how, which ones do you think really validate going to war? And then we use that in a mock UN hearing, we pull in other teachers, other professionals from around the country and across the pond, as we were able to do this year. And history's helped us out the past 2 years with giving us actual real-time, real-world conflicts on whether or not the United States should get along. So both the Arab Spring, this year Syria, has given us perfect real-world things that the students could discuss and try to convince the UN Security Council whether or not we should be going in and putting boots on the ground in those situations. So, round one. So when they come up with that initial list, what justifies going to war? We have your president. What would be situations where you would say force is okay? So, and for the sake of time, let's see here. All of this is on my wiki, so I've put this document is one of the PDFs right there so that you can see the whole shebang. But I wanted to let you see. So, as kind of a here, I'll do the first paragraph. One of the hardest decisions a leader has to make is whether to send people off to fight and possibly die. While few people ever face such a decision, as citizens, we are expected to elect a president who is required to make this decision. What is it like to confront such a decision? What should leaders consider when deciding whether to use military force against another nation? What ideas might guide them when selecting among several options? While the president consults advisors, in the end, the president alone decides. On rare occasions, the decision is an easy one. After the Japanese bombed the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, President Franklin Roosevelt knew that declaring war was the right decision. He realized that though a lot of people would die because of his easy decision, at other times the decision is harder to make since what is right or just is not as clear. For example, how many people would have to die to make the decision to declare war against a nation a just decision? So, like I said, the full text of that and the roles that we put the students in. So we have Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of National Security, and we give them little kind of backgrounds for each of those roles so that they kind of have to put themselves in that situation while they're thinking of, okay, would this validate going to war or not? So, let's see what you guys think before we see what the kids came up as just reasons for going to war. If you guys have had fun with Socrative in the past, this is one of the best things ever. So if you want to on your device, if you've used Socrative, you can just go to the clicker. If not, type in m.socrative, SOCRATIVE.com. m.socrative.com, and you can do that from either a laptop, an iPod, iPad, and when you get there it should ask for a room number. Your room number is green, just like the color. And this is a fantastic tool in the classroom if you do have either computers available. Our building is a one-to-one iPod building. And this is great because it also will let you download at the end, so you can have the students answer the questions, and then you get an Excel document that has each student's name and what their response to each of your questions was.
How do you set up your room?
You set up your teacher, so you go to the teacher site and you sign up for an account, and then you can manage your quizzes, you can create quizzes. They have a race so that if they're answering, it'll automatically like put you in blue, red, green, put you in a color group, and then you watch rockets race across as they're answering questions. So there are a lot of, you can do just quick true or false, so you haven't even written the question, you just want to say, here's my question, true or false, and then the kids have to answer it, or you can do it this way. So you can see people are starting to put in their names. And I've sent the first question. Should have been sent. Wah-wah.
Just got it.
So you can either do it as just a straight quiz where it's student-paced, so they're individual, they're supposed to be quiet, and they're answering their questions. Or you can do it so that it's teacher-paced, so I'm going to send you a question now, and I'm going to send you a question at the very end, and you'd have that option to do it that way too. And the one I'm giving you is open-ended, but you can do multiple choice. So this is just a super fantastic, cool website. And you can either hide, like it says there, you can hide live results, but right now I'm just like, let everybody see what everyone's done. So we have national defense due to violence, invasion, immediate threat, to protect the country's freedom or safety, immediate danger, jeopardizes the security of one nation, and there are no diplomatic alternatives. That's a social studies teacher. Genocide, threat of a large-scale nuclear attack on a country, destruction of people and property with intent to limit freedom, attacking U.S. unstable government, threatening the U.S. All these are super, and for the sake of time. But you can kind of see, this lets you see a little bit of how Socrative works, how you can use that. See what the grown-ups thought, now let's see what the kids thought. So this was last year, so this group that just finished school in May, this was the list that they came up with. The one thing, this is the second full year that we've done this. The first year, it was much more humanitarian. One thing we did see this past year, with as much as the economy has been in the news, the kids were much more concerned about money this year than they had been the previous year. So it's kind of interesting how that filters in with this being an election year. I'll be really interested to see how that impacts it. But another nation attacks us. There's our FDR Pearl Harbor one, and I'm just going to run through these. I do think I'll condense my presentation into a handout, and I'll also put that on my wiki so that you guys can have the full reasoning. Number 2, an ally is attacked. Number 3, to get or protect vital resources such as oil and water. They're definitely aware of limited resources, so that one comes up. And some of these just kind of shifted positions from the year before too. That's one of the ones that moved up. To keep another nation from making or using weapons of mass destruction, such as nuclear weapons. Protect, fight for certain principles, such as freedom. To get or protect territory. To stop abuse of people, such as slavery or genocide. So there's another one from the board. At times you need to preserve peace. Their little minds are thinking. If it seems like another nation is going to attack first, so imminent threat. Okay, stop with, and then maintain strength and the image that you are a strong nation. So you've got that whole kind of face-saving side of things. And if you're asking where all this came from, the person who wades through every single comment that is made on the website is our advisor, Dr. Joe O'Brien at KU. And after each discussion happens on Friday, he looks it over on the weekend, and then he comes out with a memo the following week that kind of summarizes what happened in the discussion. so that the kids kind of have to see, and he also looks through all the different time zones. So he kind of comes through, because time zone 1 may have gone this way, time zone 2 goes that way, and so he's the one who kind of pulls it all together. He's the one who, that lovely list, he's the one that came up with that list and kind of does the justification. And that's the list that every single discussion, I do a classroom set of that, and that's on the kids' tables for them to refer back to. So it gives them that continuity that it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the Spanish-American War or World War II, they've got that to look at and kind of to ponder and think about. So he is a presence on the website. They do know him, and we're working in more ways. We've started embedding audio, so every situation, and we'll be there in a second, Nick reads and records and puts on the website. We're kind of getting to the point where we don't know if Dr. O'Brien's if he'll just read his memos, if he'll do a little podcast so the kids can watch him. Because it's kind of, if they know other people are watching, they kind of get a little more, they get a little more engaged, they take it a little more seriously. Plus Joe has a really cool, deep voice, so it'd be kind of neat to incorporate that in. Let's see here. In the first year, we generated the list of reasons for why the president thought it'd be okay. And we had 5 situations that the kids used the first year. Last year we added one that was Adams and the undeclared war on France. We wanted to incorporate other situations where war didn't happen. So there was the Adams one, Native Americans with westward expansion. So kind of the proclamation of 1760. Sorry, it's been a year since I've taught that. War of 1812, Civil War, Spanish-American War, and World War I are the ones that we did last year. We are thinking about adding in the kind of the Civil War piece. We're thinking about adding, especially when we're thinking about adding the students from the United Kingdom, we're thinking about putting in that whole Great Britain thought about getting involved, coming in on the side of the Confederacy, and decided to stand back. So that's kind of one of those other situations where we're thinking, okay, this would be a good one that we could incorporate that wouldn't, that didn't end up leading to people getting involved, boots on the ground. But so we've got Adams and France. So we do each situation. We don't let the kids know which countries are involved. We bake it up for them so that they don't automatically think, oh, it's the United States, they're right, we've got to go for them. We kind of put it, and we use either the school names or the school mascots to kind of add that little bit of, because these are middle schoolers, they're deep thinking's not, they're not, it's black and white, we're not quite to that gray space yet. So by kind of putting in the situation, now your gifted kids, every time I had 1 or 2 kids that could, I'm talking in my entire group of class, that could figure out which situation it was. But for the most part, most of the kids aren't realizing, oh, this is the Spanish-American War. But so with this one, we use it like moving to school. So when United States is a little baby nation, we use it like middle school. You come in as a 6th grader. How much do you know compared with the big 8th graders in school? Something that these kids can, identify with. So I will let you, this whole situation I've posted on the wiki so that you can read the whole thing. But this lets you see, because they are kind of dense to get in the facts that we needed, the first year we did this, I walked by a table where the kids were grouping, and one of the girls was actually literally drawing a picture for one of the boys. I'm like, that's brilliant, that's a great idea. It's also a girl that you never would have imagined. It's like, that's great, go with it. I'll tell you which one it was in a little while. So I started drawing the pictures. I've become the unofficial or the official illustrator for the group. I also use the technology of whiteboard because I haven't found anything online that I really like quite as much. So I've posted the full screenshot is on the wiki, but you can see. So we have France and England who've been at war for years. So I have the Bronx and El Dorado. They've kicked out their king. They're firing cannons at each other. They're impounding the Jayhawk United States ships. So I kind of do that. So depending on the kid, with the dense reading, they've got this nice visual that kind of helps them see. The other thing I've had to do, I've started the first year when I drew the pictures, it was still kind of geographically appropriate, so, you know, England was over here and the United States was over here. I've started kind of flipping the hemispheres a little bit so that my ones that do know geography don't then clue into who's who on the map. And then I have little bits of the discussions. We do tell the kids if they want full points, they cannot just say, I agree, because otherwise you end up with a lot of I agrees. So they have to say, if they say I agree, they have to state a reason for it. So here's we should send a new delegation to El Dorado because they want to trade with us and they helped us against the Bronx. I agree because they were our allies in the beginning and we know what they have and what they can do, and they are less likely to betray us if they are offered a peace treaty with the Bronx. So it just goes through, if you use the Logarms, you can see the full discussions the kids got through. So we have those 5 situations throughout the year that the students use. All of those are on the website. If you kind of play around on there, you can either download from that. I've put the Adams one is on my Wiki for you, as well as the graphic organizer that we use for that one. But then we have our summative thing with the call for clarity, our UN piece. So we have representatives from the UN Security Council. So we had teachers, administrators, PhD students, and then the museum people from England each took on the role of someone from the Security Council. So they even had to kind of play that point of view. So if you were China or Russia, when we're talking about Syria, you had to, you know, they were kind of backing up the Syria. They really didn't want, so when they were involved in the discussion with the kids, they had to kind of take that point, play devil's advocate, depending on what the kid's thinking was. So like I said, last year we used the Arab Spring, so our situation was with what was going on in Bahrain and Yemen, and then this year we used Syria. Although we did have a couple of contingency plans because things were going so fast there. When we discussed it in March, we're like, okay, by this date we're calling the cutoff and we're going to pick which country we're going to run with. Because we could have gone back and done Libya, we could have, you know, gone a lot of different, Egypt, we could have gone a lot of different directions this year. But Syria was still going hot and heavy and was still kind of, you know, it was a fuzzy one. It did give the kids something they really had. It wasn't as cut and dry. So we used, this is where we used our connections to kind of make it a little more real for kids. We had our friends in Great Britain make a little video and explain the situation to the kids. Maybe. It wants to play. Okay, it doesn't want to do it. You can watch it later. But, so, we've got British accents, we've got fighter jets behind them, so it made it really cool for the kids to be able to see that. So, what did they decide? What kind of thinking are we getting out of middle schoolers? So, this is a comment from a 14-year-old Chinese delegate, because apparently they've just been asked a question. Thank you for the compliment. As for enforcing the embargo, the U.S. should monitor the flow of firearms into Syria. Even though it is its own sovereign nation, I feel that it still needs the guidance, but not the intervention of the U.S. and UN. And then 10 pages later, same student again, hedgehogs. They had to come up with team names, so apparently there were some hedgehogs. I support your ideas of arms embargo, sending more observers, and doing nothing. An arms embargo could limit the casualties and eventually lead to a successful ceasefire. Sending more observers could help control the violence and monitor the government's actions. Doing nothing is also a good choice, because the UN has already deployed many observers and worked out a peace treaty. The U.S. getting involved could cost American lives, damage the economy, and potentially lead to another 10-year war. That's a 14-year-old. So, there, you know, and we still have some that are like, I agree, or one that was like a page of agree. But you've got kids that are getting engaged and really getting into that higher order thinking. Let's see here. Another student, no, so this is another 14-year-old. I don't think that we should start a war to make peace, because that is not the right way of going about it. That is like a first grader hitting another first grader to become friends. Sounds silly, right? If instead of hitting each other, they work things out, it would be much easier to become allies and trust them more than fighting and being basically made to become friends. So what I'm saying is, they should try to make a treaty or something instead of going to war. That way, no one gets hurt. This is also, because the kids start trying to plant their own things, this is one who did somehow manage to hit someone and work hitting someone into every single one of her posts. So she made it sound all nice and fancy, but she also still hit her goal of getting that involved in the discussion. And then here's another just full exchange between first post by a student, I agree, and then questioning each other. And I'll put that up, but for the sake of time, and then you still have the, yeah girl, I agree, of. So, you know, you still got a little bit of the, got the higher, the low, it comes together. Like with the hitting, this second year we've seen the kids, I don't know if it's our comfort level with the discussions, with the kind of setting everything up, that we've kind of noticed more of what the kids are doing while they're in the discussions. We've noticed this year there's a lot more chatter in the classrooms during the online discussions. So the kids were having their own, hey, look at what so-and-so posted, ooh, I hate her. And you know, just all that going on during the class, as well as what was going on online. But this year there were also a couple of interesting things. The purple squirrels took off like gangbusters. We noticed that in time zone 3, I had a couple of students that the Pioneer Ridge kids were seeking out. They kept looking for the purple squirrel and trying to comment on his posts. So, and usually because there was, I mean, there'd be a good exchange going on. But then toward the end of the year, they started to commandeer the purple squirrel. So purple squirrels started showing up on everyone's profile pictures. So then they became rainbow squirrels, so kids were getting into Photoshop to personalize their squirrel, and then so they really took it and they ran with it. So we're trying to figure out how to harness that for next year. And then this was the first year we had students try to create one of their own groups. So we had SAUW, which was Students Against Unjustifiable War. So they're really starting to take more ownership of the site. That last discussion that I showed you, that was the banter, I didn't go into the whole thing, there was a kid that went in a week later and added a comment. So we're finding that kids are even going on, if they're sick, they may still go on and do it, or they'll go in later and look for a comment and add things in. So they're not just leaving it, they're taking it out of the classroom. Okay, things that we've kind of spotted. So right now it can get ungainly when we've got, and because they will get up to 25, 30 pages within a discussion. So we're trying to find ways to kind of control it. We are talking about doing smaller groups within the time zones. So like 4 kids from each class in one discussion, and then do it that way so that it also will make those ones that do try to kind of do the bare minimum, it'll make them step up because they're going to be required to hold up more of the conversation too. We're also thinking about like the students, like I showed you the quotes from, they're fantastic, they're really thinking about, we're thinking about trying to figure out a way to make them become group discussion leaders. So we're going to, turn it kind of over to them in the discussion to lead it for the other students. And so that's one of the things we're thinking about. We're incorporating this year, we're sitting down and we're going to work the Common Core, actually work the Common Core with its critical thinking and writing skills. We're going to write those in because that is one thing that will tie New York and Kansas together for these discussions. I already mentioned kind of maybe we're thinking about another non-war situation, United Kingdom Civil War. kind of, and to look more and see how the individual students evolve as things are going along. There was another thought there that has now gone away, so. I thought something. No, it's gone. So, we've got 6 minutes left, even though I know I was going in turbo speed. Any questions, anything about either the Ning site, how this is going? We gave this presentation in December at the National NCSS, the National Council for Social Studies, and one of the lovely ladies from the video on our main site from the Imperial War Museum at Duxford, the American Air Museum, has invited myself and my colleague Nick Lawrence. We're going to be in England the next 3 weeks working with the Imperial War Museum. It was 5 American middle school teachers and 5 British middle level teachers who are going to be kind of putting together a curriculum and trying to have discussions kind of in the vein of this, but looking specifically at World War II. And even though we were allies, what were the 2 different perspectives of the same conflict? So that's where all the UK stuff is. Yes.
With using the online discussion, would you do that during class time, or was that something like?
Yeah, no, we did that during class time. We'd have the face-to-face, so we do that the day before, day or 2 before, and then we'd have the online discussion on Fridays. This past year, the previous year I'd always use laptop part. This year I used the computer lab because it was nice because I was able to see everyone's screen at the same time. And it had a good projector in it so that I could put up the discussion. So if I saw a really good comment, I could call the kids' attention to it and then go back.
How much time would you allot to that?
It was about, depending on class grade, like 30 to 45 minutes, we try to actually be online doing the discussion. And then Dr. O'Brien would look at it over the weekend. He'd do the memo that summed it up, and then either the following Monday, you'd kind of debrief, okay, what happened during the discussion, or I tended to do it right before the next one. So I'd pull back, okay, remember what we did last time? Okay, here's what came out of that. Now, here's this discussion. So we did kind of go back to it. Let me, just, I'm going to push you guys to the next question in soccer tip if you want. It's just asking if there's anything else you want me to put on my wiki later for any documents that I might have. I can post up there. Like I said, I'll compress this too and put it up so you can see the whole presentation, read everything that I skimmed over very, very quickly. But if you have any questions, feel free to contact any of us. Nick Lawrence, he's at the East Bronx Academy. This was his little thesis brainchild. Myself or Joe O'Brien is our professor at KU, who kind of is the glue that keeps us all together. But yeah, feel free anytime, and I'll try to leave the podcast or the Podstock link on my wiki too for you guys. But yeah, I can post anything else if you throw it on soccer. If you want to see something specific, I can do that, or I can outsource to Nick or Joe. We can get a hold of that for you.
Other questions, comments for Kori?
No, thank you.
I know that was in turbo speed.
Um,
Talk fast.
With your partnership with the university, is there, I assume the grad students are doing this as part of their class to help you monitor, or?
I think some of it's a little volunteer. There is one grad student who is dedicated to this program because we are publishing articles. We're taking this whole thing seriously. There's one that's dedicated to it and one that kind of does sideline, and then he'll pull in the other, because he's the puppet master. They're his doc students. So when we need that extra support, he kind of, he says jump and they say how high. It's that great student labor at the university level.
So do you see that being a continued relationship?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Well, considering I'm still in theory, I'll have my master's next summer. But